I'm Rolene Marks, and every Monday to Thursday, you join me right here on the Israel Brief, brought to you by Lay of the Land for your top stories making headlines in Israel. And before I tell you where you can find us online, let's take a look at those top stories making the headlines today. And it is road to elections yet again. I mean, it's like deja vu all over again. But the first salvo was fired earlier today in the Knesset when the first reading of the bill to dissolve the current Knesset passed by 110 in favor and 10 abstentions. There were no votes against it. This is the first reading. It now goes to the Knesset Law Committee and will have to pass 3 more readings or votes before it is final. Meanwhile, there is a proposition to bring another bill to vote today, and that is the bill to prevent any lawmaker, any MK who is facing criminal indictment from being able to form a government. Now, it is largely believed that this is a personal attempt to try and prevent former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from returning to power. However, the current Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, has said he will not vote in favor of this bill. He believes that it should be decided by democracy and should not be tampered with by any kind of bill. Meanwhile, speaking of the now outgoing Prime Minister Bennett, he spoke to US Secretary of State Antony Blinken last night ahead of President Biden's visit to the Middle East next month. He thanked the Secretary of State for their friendship and for all his help, and the two discussed the importance of ties between the two countries, saying that they are bigger than any kind of upheaval. The US Secretary of State also thanked Prime Minister Bennett for helping to build ties and to strengthen ties between the two countries. The Prime Minister assured Secretary of State Blinken that he will continue to support the incoming interim Prime Minister Yair Lapid. Foreign Minister Yair Lapid has also had a busy time on the phone. He spoke to his counterpart from the United Kingdom, Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, earlier today. The two foreign secretaries and ministers spoke about the importance of the international community in working to prevent a terrorist Iran as well as regional instability. Foreign Secretary Truss is expected also to visit Israel next month. So it looks like July, which is peak summer, is turning out to be quite a busy month for the state of Israel. And the last story is one that fascinates me. As you know, since the 1st of February this year, we have been bringing you quite in-depth coverage of Amnesty International, the various players in that organization, and some of the comments that they have been making about the state of Israel. This follows their report that they released on the 1st of February, accusing Israel of, quote-unquote, the crimes against humanity of the practice of apartheid against the Palestinian people. But this story has an interesting twist and turn. That report was issued by Amnesty International's United Kingdom-based office. Now, what is very interesting is that an independent inquiry this past week has found that particular office guilty of, quote-unquote, the crimes of colonization and the practice of institutionalized and systemic racism within the organization. Now, this is very, very interesting because the same organization that is releasing reports and accusing Israel of racism and apartheid is in fact now found guilty of practicing it within its own organization itself. There is a 106-page document that lays out the charges and the accusations of various staff members against management and other staff members belonging to the NGO. Now remember, Amnesty International is still considered one of the most venerable human rights organizations in the world, or so for the moment. There is also another investigation that will be conducted into whether or not they are using the funding that they receive from the government into best practices, seeing that they released that very, very appalling report earlier this year. Now, some of the accusations against Amnesty International's management are quite staggering because I've, of course, naturally, in order to bring you the news, read through the report. Some accusations of racist language, touching people and commenting on their ethnicity or their hair without their permission, making derogatory comments about religious practices such as Ramadan, which is a very, very sacred Muslim religious time of the year, and so on and so on. So the next time you see Amnesty International accusing the state of Israel, as they are wont to do on an almost daily basis, of the practices of apartheid, you might want to ask them to take a long look at their own practices before they point fingers. The executive director in the United Kingdom, Sasha de Schmack, no, I did not make that name up, that is his name, has said he fully understands the type of transformation and the type of work that will be needed in the organization, and we would like to make a suggestion to them. They have been asked repeatedly to investigate anti-Semitism and the rise of anti-Semitic incidents in the United Kingdom, but have opted out of that, saying that if they investigate anti-Semitism, they have to also investigate Islamophobia. Well, our suggestion is, if you want to retain your title as respected human rights organization and fix the racism in your own organization, you best hop to it. So I am now off my soapbox, and I will just reiterate where you can find us online. Our website is www.layoftheland.online. Our Facebook page, or rather our Facebook community, because we love that you are a part of it, can be found at Lottle's site. Give us a like, give us a follow, share our content. Hey, pop us a message or two. But please note, if your messages are in some ways derogatory, like somebody posted yesterday, we will remove you. Our Twitter handle is at @layoftheland5. And of course, we're right here on YouTube at The Israel Brief. And all you have to do is click on that red subscribe button to know when we post our latest broadcasts. And why don't you invite your friends too as well? And all that remains for me today is to wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for watching The Israel Brief. I'm Rolene Marks, and before we head off into the weekend, I'll be back right here with those top stories from Israel tomorrow.